It's the 28th of June, 2025. I'm Chris, and this is the future of photography.
The future of photography.
Hello, everyone. How are we doing today?
Splendid, thank you.
Splendid.
Good.
We might get a barking dog, I was told.
Maybe.
So maybe. Possibly.
Yeah, he's sleeping now,
Just-
but if he gets bored and wants my attention,
Just to set
you'll know what's going on.
expectations. Just to set expectations. Here's a topic that we have. Well, Jermaine, I have possibly hinted on last time, or at least it might have been in the post show, but it's something that caught my eye that I don't fully understand. And it's not necessarily from a technical point of view, but from an overall general why point of view. I'm talking about UV printing. So there is this company called Eufy, EUFY. I think they are owned by Anchor, and they have just had a pretty successful Kickstarter campaign for their Eufy Make Printer E1, which I think they came from the security area, from cameras and these kind of things. So them making a printer, first of all, interesting. And second of all, this Kickstarter campaign has raked in $46.7 million US. I think it's the biggest Kickstarter campaign ever.
Now, before we get into the specifics, there is something that occurs to me, which is Anchor, which is a very well-known company. I have gear by them. They tend to make pretty interesting and good gear. And all of a sudden, you'd think a big company with a product launch would invest their own money and, move a printer into a small testbed area, build it out, experiment, and then market it. But maybe this entire strategy is just a new paradigm, a new model in companies using public money for product launches, and what they've pre-sold, obviously, close to $40 million, net or gross of their new product, without really investing a dime. It's all profit.
Okay, so I believe the way Kickstarter is being used in this campaign and in several others is not for financing the production of the product, but to get visibility, to gauge interest, and I think that they're pledging their goal was like 500,000, so they vastly overshot with 17,800 backers, which is crazy, especially with a product that costs. I think the early bird was like $1,600 or $1,700 US. So it's not a lifestyle drone for $99 or something. It's a serious purchase, and they have received a lot of visibility, and I'm still wondering not just why did they get so much attention, but what is it about UV printing that makes it so desirable for so many people, apparently?
Well, Chris, when you sent me that text with that Kickstarter launch, and I looked at it, the first words that I typed were Etsy.
Yes, I think that's part of the reason. So what we're looking at, of course, is let's go with the tech first, right? What is a UV printer? Let me play their Kickstarter video on the side just to have something to look at here on the video feed. So UV printing, as I understand the tech of UV printing, it is ink that gets printed on a surface, and a lot of different materials are possible there. And then UV light hardens it, so you can add layers and get some structure, some texture, some three-dimensionality. It's not a 3D printer. It's somewhere in between a 3D printer and a regular printer, somewhere in there. Is that fair?
Yeah.
Jeremiah?
Yes, because basically the print head with the ink moves over the surface of whatever you're printing on rather than the paper moving through the rollers and print head assigning it. It's a quite a different process, and the UV light, of course, hardens it. So it can be used for outdoor, you can use it in more robust ways than, sort of a classic paper printer. It looks to me that if you wanted to print kind of little sayings on a coffee mug, this is your printer.
So the surface, I believe that Kickstarter there's an additional accessory you can get, which is a roller accessory, so you can have like print on round things as in bottles and mugs and things like that. But yeah, the tech means you can print on
pretty much anything:
wood, glass, all sorts of surfaces. And it hardens with UV. It's a bit like, I guess, nails, gel nails, that kind of stuff that also harden. I think it's probably similar technology there.
Yeah, so, or like resin. So Emma, when she's doing her crafting stuff, she uses UV to cure resin when she's coating, some of the things that she's made and stuff like that. So
that's part of the process.
So. Yeah, Jeremiah, you wrote Etsy, and that is, I think, one of the ideas here to produce things for sale, because you can have very durable kinds of prints, and the raised nature of these prints is certainly something that is different from what we see here in the video are pictures that, like, even like paintings where the brush strokes are not just visible, but risen as in a relief on the whole material.
Like an oil painting, like a proper oil painting.
Yeah,
sort of, but made from plastic pretty much. So that's the difference, I guess.
I work with a printer, which I've mentioned on the show a few times, POV, Fine Art Printing, downtown Los Angeles. Jeremy, who runs the shop, they cater primarily to fine art, but they have a massive UV printer, must be 12 feet wide. I mean, it's extraordinarily big, among others. So I've used it for my art practice and printing on different surfaces. But he, early days when he first got it, he was experimenting with creating depth maps on painted surfaces with brush strokes, textures, and whatnot. And then creating a print which actually emulated those, and the textures of them are quite high. I mean, they're very visible, and it does appear, if you do it right and the right I guess piece to print, it does look like a painted surface. So they can do astonishing things that are not flat. Whether it's the surface of what you're printing on, if that's curved, or wooden, which has all kinds of grain, or also just on paper, thicker paper, and build up over and over textures that can be adjusted so that you're just printing certain things high, certain things low. So it gives you a little bit more control over what you're outputting. And but, I used it primarily because I wanted to print on wood, on gessoed wood as an underpaint, and then use traditional painting techniques to glaze over it. So it was the perfect appliance to integrate sort of AI and traditional. But it's used for all kinds of things, and signage being one of the principles. You could print, especially with a 12-footer, you could print a sign that looks amazing. You can print it on plexiglass or backlight, et cetera, et cetera. And so I think that the commercial uses of this printer are really the significant focus. That's why I said Etsy. So you have small businesses, like your wife's business, Adrian, that would benefit from this kind of thing, or a small sign company that just uses it to kind of output for local clients. So I do think it's commercial more than art. I mean, I use it for art, but I don't think it's a something that is typically in the vernacular of fine art work. I'm not sure of the archival nature of the inks and how they last just printed alone. I suspect with UV curing it would be pretty good. But what do you know about archival nature of this, the last of the inks?
Nothing at all at the moment, but it's an interesting one, isn't it? So living as I do in a household which has a lot of crafting going on, I can see obvious joy and experimentation, and definitely the potential commercial exploitation of things like this. It's another thing to offer, right? We can make things if it can make things properly robust, so that if you sell it to somebody, then they don't come back 6 weeks later saying it's broken. Then there's a huge there's a huge opportunity out there for for makers, for crafters, the Etsy economy, the Shopify economy, all of those things, which I think is great, because it's an antidote, isn't it, to buying everything from the same three companies, right? So so I think it's fantastic, because it democratizes the technology, and allows people to create things, and allows people to support small businesses and to support, different ways of doing things, and people who are working independently and stuff like that. So I'm all for this sort of thing and what it actually means.
I'm all for it as well, and I do understand what its uses are. One of the things I'm hung up on is the sheer volume of over 17,000 people being ready to spend $1,700, and the running cost of this is expensive. We're talking real cost for the inks. I think one thing I read on the page, I hope I'm right here, but it's like $40 for 100 milliliters of ink, which
you could easily spend $600 for
which if you make a relief, and this thing supports making a release up to 5 millimeters, which is significant, means layers upon layers upon layers. 100 milliliters is nothing. So making things with that for sale, for your Etsy shop or for your company, is going to be expensive. So small runs, totally fine. I mean, it fits time-wise. The timing is, I think, very good, because a lot of people, I think, are looking into some home side hustles of some sort. But this amount of interest, I mean, they had some virality. There were some articles, there was some videos showing UV printers, and but yeah, this is just... I think it's crazy that almost 18,000 people are willing to shell out and for something that will also produce a long tail of high production cost.
Well, yeah, that's
am I just cheap about?
No.
Something
that's
I completely missed.
What struck me is first of all, when I first looked at it, and I looked at the price, I thought, well, that's a very specific and highly specialized printer.
I don't see that volume, to be honest.
No, and then you look at the printer. Printer's okay, 1600. That's for a top of the line 1722 Canon printer, it's more than that. I think that's about $1,200. But then
they do have an AI powered workflow. That's one of their claims, which basically means take a photo and make it 3-dimensional. So give it the texture. No, but
tricky.
Here's
tricky. Yeah.
This could be, and I think it is, just a brilliant move by Anker to create a buzz. They did not sell the amount of running costs of it. In other words, that's they kind of buried the lead there. But it wouldn't be, if you were using this a lot, it wouldn't, your ink purchases could be well over $500 at a time to keep this machine running. And I thought, how many makers are there that would be willing to buy a printer that they've never used, never actually seen? So
from a company that is not known to produce printers. They are known for security cameras and these kind of things. So they are not even an established printer manufacturer.
So it's the business model that really impressed me more than anything. In other words, how do you take effectively a brand name, Anker, but out of their realm, and create a product which they may have created in-house or purchased this from a team and branded it, and then created a narrative online, introduce it as a Kickstarter, and pre-sell $40 million worth of product before it's even out the door. That is
huge.
Impressive.
It's wild.
It's very impressive. And I'm just trying to do the mental arithmetic in my head, because just thinking about the sort of prices we can charge for small pieces here in the UK that are crafted, but by a skilled individual, and what it would mean in terms of production cost. But if we are thinking about something, let's say it's 2 mil thick and 10 centimeters by 10 centimeters, because we'll make this 100 milliliters come. So 100 milliliters would be 10 millimeters high on a surface 10 centimeters by 10 centimeters. So I'm talking about however much that cost was. I forget the number, but
maybe it puffs up during curing, so you get more texture out of it.
Possibly, but you'd only get 5. Let's say whatever that bottle of ink or the materials cost. You're only going to get 5 prints of the size of a drinks coaster, right? Out of one set of materials. So that's going to be quite expensive.
If those $40 are in fact correct, I might be wrong there. I looked up a few others because there are other 3D other UV printers out there for, let's say, a high-end consumer market that are a bit more expensive than this, but not that much. We're talking $2,500 maybe, where the inks are cheaper. It's not as the others are not as plug and play. They look more like a small batch production with not custom hardware, but more like off the shelf stuff. So that they look more clunky and so on. But their inks were maybe half that price, $20 for 100 milliliters.
Let me introduce a question. I've never seen a business model like this so effectively positive for the company. Do you think this can represent some? Will we start to see more activity in the way products are developed and output in a large-scale pre-sale?
I think this is, for me, this isn't the first. It may be the biggest, but it's not. There are, for example, multiple manufacturers of camera bags who do this routinely, right? So I'm pretty sure I've seen cameras and lenses and filters and other things like that. But camera bags, especially, there are some companies that just do everything.
Well, Peak Design started like that, and they're a viable, great company. But I'm not talking a camera bag is something that, like, well, I can carry my camera in a shopping bag if I had to. A UV printer is for the home is a new technology. And so what I'm really suggesting is new technology. And we could talk about, what is Johnny Ive doing with AI? What kind of gizmos, consumer products will they create? And there's no shortage of cash in that little compound to create some kind of tech that uses AI and Johnny Ive's kind of consumer interface with the tech. Arguably, he's one of the top, if not the top, designer. And so, would a company like that go to Kickstarter for pre-sales to test the market, as it were? I don't know, but it could be a very exciting way for innovation to get quickly into the hands of those who want it, provided that these companies are not just putting out a prototype, pre-selling it, and 2 years later, maybe you get it.
The general issue I have with these crowdfunded campaigns that I have had for a long time now is that you just don't know what you're getting, because
Exactly.
the campaign that Eufy ran is very successful, apparently. And by the way, I just found their business case on the Kickstarter site. So they have a few examples. Boost your small business. So first example is a metal poster with a 3D texture, 12 by 16 inches. Retail sale price $69. Units per day 10. Cost for the blank item $15. For the ink $239. So maybe I have overestimated the ink cost here. $516 profit per day on this one item. Of course, you have to find
You have to sell them.
customers.
And those are absolutely not your cost to sell. Let's
Of course not.
be clear there.
Of course not.
That is a gross margin that would then be the contribution to the rest of your business costs and your earnings as an independent creator.
The custom ceramic fridge magnet, 2 by 2 inches, retail sale price $8, units per day 240. Blank cost $3 plus 27 cents per ink. $1,135 profit per day. So it's not really fair to calculate this way, because
the assumptions are somewhat optimistic.
So,
and 240 items sales per day, that must be quite a fridge magnet.
It is a hell of a fridge magnet, isn't it? So but there are. So I think the units there are high, right? And I think it's not actually profit, because it's the accountant at me is kicking and screaming at this, because it's not your profit, it's your margin, right? And it's as I say, it's the contribution that particular product sale will make to the rest of the cost of your business and your personal earnings and whatever else you've got going on. So I think that there's but hey. Right, if they can get it within and not least of which, of course, is recovering the cost of the printer in the first place, right? Because you have to recover the cost of the assets you invested. But
looking at these numbers, you can easily do this in 2 days, and you're right.
Just with magnets.
Just with fridge magnets. Yeah. Well, indeed. But okay, little bit of poetic license there in the so-called business case vignettes, right? But I think that if they can put it within the realms of the pricing for these things, and I think we've all you all experienced, I'm sure, and many of our listeners and viewers will as well, that actually when you go and buy something from a place like Etsy, it costs a bit more than you think it might, right? And there's good reason for that, right? Because these are independent people, they're not selling at high volume, they're not manufacturing at high volume, and so things are genuinely more expensive to make. And often as well, they don't have massive, great shipping contracts, and so you're actually paying genuinely, small volume shipping costs on stuff like that. Now there are people who really, really, milk the shipping cost for extra margin, which is something that we get very vexed about in our business. But it's it is those sorts of costs do feel like they are within the margins of within the envelope that you could actually successfully use a machine like this, especially where you bear in mind that a lot of these crafting businesses are not the only businesses that people have, or the only source of income that people have. The vast majority of people selling things on Etsy are not doing that as their only source of income, of course.
I mean, how do we bring this back to the future of photography? Because, we can go far out on business models and kind of texture printing, etc. But how, I mean, we could talk about the Eufy printer specifically, or we could talk about innovations in photographic processes that would use something for consumers or art or advertising or marketing, etc., that would be basically, fuel to the production of these things. Because as we know, it's one thing to innovate, create, invent, and prototype. It's another realm to market and expand into demand. Because if your product is successful as a kind of standalone product, the demand could be so overwhelming that it basically crushes your ability to deliver a satisfactory product in enough time. I've had this experience on Kickstarter where I purchased something. In this case, it was a flat panel small studio where every panel had a control of LED lights, so that it was like a white cyc, but totally manipulatable on your phone for side lighting, top lighting, whatever you wanted to do, but the lights were in the panels. And I thought, oh, what a great idea. This is fabulous. I could really use this. Folds flat. 2 years later, still didn't have it. They just couldn't get it up to speed. So they basically refunded. They blanked it. Then I found another company that was about to go into production on a very similar thing, and the only problem with them is they were based in Lviv, in Ukraine, and it was right at the time of the invasion. So all those guys who I was in contact with, they went and worked on drones. So again, innovation and smarts are one thing. Demand is another, but fulfillment is a completely other world. Now, one thing we know about Anchor, they're good about fulfillment. They have experience in delivering products on a massive scale.
I don't expect this to be a dud. I think they have the production capacity. They now know what they need to invest to deliver 17,000 of these things, and there will be more. I think this is a viable product for sure. I don't expect this to be really bad or anything. But yeah, there's risks, and at least it's a complex product. I've seen a lot of Kickstarter products that were not super complex, and what then happened is there are companies, especially in China, that will scout Kickstarter campaigns, find the things that they might be able to make quickly, and in some cases the product is, or a knockoff of the product is out on the market before the actual product is finished. So that's not going to happen here. Definitely not. There's way too much development effort in this. And looking at this product, this has been in development for years. This is not a thing that they just thought up.
No, and UV printing has been with us for a while.
So you do have experience with UV printing. You sent me let me share that a picture that you had UV printed, which looks like an oil painting with all the texture and everything that comes with it.
Yeah, I mean, you can't see it close, but it is it is painted effectively.
Like a Rembrandt.
Yeah, it's using Flemish techniques. I developed the imagery using my AI processes, and worked that up to what I felt was a pretty good start. Pulled it into Photoshop, adjusted, and then once I was happy with it, I adjusted the colors so that they would be the equivalent of an underpainting, kind of faded, just hints of the color. I took gessoed board. This is part of a series of works that I'm doing, larger series. Had a gessoed piece of wood, which I then brought to my printer and had it printed, UV printed. Then I took that and brought it back to the studio and started to glaze the actual colors layer by layer, much the way you would do it on Photoshop, which is classic Flemish techniques, and then varnish and sand and actual paint for highlights, etc., in order to kind of complete the piece. But it started as AI. It started with a concept, developed in AI, over to Photoshop, UV printed, and then painted. So this is, a classic fusion of like old and new technologies, which is where I live in, and it was very effective. I've finished about 4 of these, and they're a lot of work. But also, I just have one of these right here. I happen to have this. Look at that. Look at that. That is something from a show. Did that. This is something that was part of a larger piece.
Does the one you just showed involve UV printing?
Yes, it's UV printed on the back of 1/4-inch glass.
Oh, so it's behind glass. Okay.
It's behind glass, so a piece of glass. And I've experimented with all different kinds of glass, non-reflective, reflective, thin, thick. But the best thing is sort of real thick glass. The image, again, created with my usual techniques of AI and old school photography, science, etc., developed the imagery. Once that was done, pull out the highlights, the white highlights, anything white, pulled out. Then printed UV on the back of the glass, not the front, the back. And then once that was set, then I gold leafed by hand across the piece, so all the highlights would be in gold, and then framed it like that. They were just shown at APAD, that was in New York at the photography show. Big wall of them, but that's a classic UV print. And these are small; they're 6 inches. So the temptation of like, of not having to bring the glass downtown and do it that way. Well, but the cost of doing it, the setup, I'm not sure. I want to see the printer in action. I want to compare it to what I have, because
I think that's the thing. That's our main takeaway. We want to see this thing in action before any of us starts filling out an order form. Right.
It's like, I'm curious about resin printing, and I would certainly like to have a small resin printer now that I see the limitations of 3D printing, just in terms of accuracy and sharpness, etc. But do I want to be working with resins and all of that poison in my studio, etc., etc.? And do I want the cost of just dealing with all of that, as opposed to bringing it to a service that can do it? So one always weighs the convenience cost of doing it home, which may not be altogether that convenient, as opposed to sending it out. And you could say darkroom could be like that too. I no longer process my own film. And I have access to a darkroom whenever I want, but I'm like, nah, I'm not going to use it. Because somebody in my studio makes platinum prints just adjacent, and they have a full-on darkroom. But like, no, I'll send it. I'll send it out because I weigh the convenience and the running costs and
the time spent trying to get it right.
Exactly. So you choose your battles when you're making stuff.
Yes,
and it's like if you're going to print 200 cups, is it best to actually do it yourself or send it out to, a 3D, not a 3D, a UV print shop that'll just like, oh, yeah, they're in and out. We'll have them by Wednesday. Boom. And with shipping the way it is, boom.
Don't forget fridge magnets.
Oh, well, that's a different
260 a day. All right. Let's leave it at that and keep an eye open for the
innovations that may not be as innovative as
we'll see. Maybe there will be fridge magnets everywhere starting a few months from now. Anyway, the picks. I brought us a video tip. Nothing to do with UV printing whatsoever. You remember, I think we talked about it here quite a while ago, the biggest camera, the largest camera in the world, the Vera C. Rubin telescope camera, 3.2 gigapixels in one picture. They will be scanning the skies, the southern skies, and they're now ready to go. The camera, let me just try to share this thing. For some reason it doesn't want to be shared. Hold on. Here we go. The telescope is ready. The camera's been installed, and the guys from the Petapixel blog and podcast have been there when they fired up the whole camera. Again, we're talking 3 tons of a camera. We're talking the front lens is as tall as you are. It's the whole assembly is on a, I think it's an oil film that the whole thing rotates on, and it's so smooth that you could push it by hand. This whole thing is built in the Chilean desert, at one of the darkest spots in the world. And yeah, the guys from Petapixel had the chance to be there and look at that thing and play with it. And well, I don't think they played with it, but they watched and they reported back. And it's a very exciting kind of project because they are taking pictures of the southern sky. I think it takes them 2 days to survey, 2 or 4 days to survey the entire sky. And they do this repeatedly, and then they will make this into a movie. So like you can see the development. And I think within the first week they discovered I think 1,000 or more new asteroids. I mean, this just crazy what that thing does. And so video tip. Gonna link that in the show notes. All right. Jeremiah, you brought us...
I brought us my picture.
You brought us your picture, which let me just share that one again. Here it is. There it is. Your
UV layer.
Does it have a title?
Dowager. Actually, weeping dowager. If you're in very close, there are tears running down her cheeks.
Tactile tears. Cool.
Anyway, that was an example of using UV.
Are these in being exhibited anywhere in the near future?
Not in the near future. Probably at the end of 26. Currently, one's hanging in my bedroom. That one.
All right.
That's severe. I'm not sure I'd want to wake up to something as severe as that in my bedroom. I'm not.
Well, not everyone has their own Rembrandt at home.
True enough.
All right. And Adrian, you brought us Douglas Kirkland.
I have brought us Douglas Kirkland, a photographer that I would imagine that many of our listeners know of already, or if not, would recognise some of his photographs. There's a collection called Collectibles, Chris, from the menu at the top there, where you'll see some very famous photographs indeed. It's just. I can't remember which one it was, but something came across, or came to my attention recently, and it just reminded me to go look at more of this stuff. And for those that don't know Douglas Kirkland, loads of amazing stuff. For those that do, it's just nice to go back and check in every now and again.
I know a lot of these pictures.
Yeah, his work has really infiltrated the culture of this period in significant ways. There's so many pictures that he did that were in the zeitgeist, representative of so much. So
yeah, and a career that I believe that spans 6 decades. So, whilst a lot of this stuff we might recognise here from, let's say, the 60s and 70s, primarily on this website, there's still lots and lots of other stuff as well. So it's fantastic.
Yeah. I like it. Thanks for sharing that. We'll put a link to that in the show notes as well. And that brings us to the end of this episode. If you want to interact with us, come visit our Discord. The link is in the show notes. Otherwise, all the episodes are at thefuturephotography.com. And we'll be back soon with more. Until then, take care and bye-bye.
Bye.
You've been listening to The Future of Photography. Join the discussion on our Discord, find the show notes and all episodes at thefutureofphotography.com, and subscribe wherever you listen to audio.